I never thought I'd be the one to ruin my brother's wedding. But sometimes doing the right thing means being the villain in someone else's story. My name is Cameron, and I've spent the last 6 months watching my best friend fall deeper in love with the one person I know will destroy her. That person happens to be my charming, manipulative, serial cheating brother Colin. He's different with me, Nora insisted, curled up on my couch with a glass of wine. Her eyes sparkled with that dreamy look I'd seen too many times before, on other women's faces. You just don't see the side of him I do. I took a long sip of my own wine, trying to steady my nerves. Different how? Like how he was different with Sarah, or Jessica, or... Stop it. Nora cut me off, her voice sharp. Those were years ago. People change. I set my glass down harder than intended. He cheated on Sarah 3 months ago. I saw him with her at Riverside Cafe myself. That's impossible. Nora's laugh was dismissive, but I caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes. He was with me that whole weekend. It was Tuesday afternoon. You were at work. The room fell silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in Nora's head as she tried to rationalize it away. Finally, she stood up, gathering her purse with trembling hands. "You're jealous," she announced, her voice wavering. "You've always been jealous of any woman who gets close to your brother. Well, guess what? He proposed last night, and I said yes." The words hit me like a physical blow. "He what?" "We're getting married in June." She thrust her left hand toward me, showing off a massive diamond ring I knew Colin couldn't afford. "I wanted you to be my maid of honor, but clearly you can't be happy for us. Nora, please." I reached for her arm, but she yanked it away. "Save it. I thought you were my friend, Cameron. Real friends support each other." "Real friends tell each other the truth." She was already heading for the door. "The truth? The truth is you can't stand that your brother finally found happiness with someone, with me, your best friend. That's not—" "I've heard enough." She paused at the door, her eyes cold. "Either get on board with this wedding or stay away from both of us." The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with my half-empty wine glass and the crushing weight of what I knew was coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma, our mutual friend. "Nora just posted about the engagement. Congrats on becoming sisters." I typed back, "We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow?" Emma replied instantly, "Usual spot, 9 a.m. The next morning, over steaming lattes, I told Emma everything. About Sarah, Jessica, and at least 3 others I knew about in the past year alone. About the mysterious business trips that never quite added up. About the lipstick stains I'd found on his collar at family dinner last month. "Jesus," Emma whispered, stirring her coffee absently. "Does your family know?" I laughed bitterly. "Mom and Dad think he's perfect. The successful son who can do no wrong. They brush off every red flag as boys being boys or just phase 2 of his quarter-life crisis. And Nora won't listen. She thinks I'm jealous. Can you believe that? Like I want anything to do with my own brother's love life." I slumped back in my chair. "I just can't watch him destroy her, Emma. She deserves better." Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "So what are you going to do?" I pulled out my phone and opened my photos. I've been keeping records. Screenshots, photos, dates, times, everything I can get my hands on. I even have receipts from hotels he definitely wasn't staying at for business. "Cam." Emma's eyes widened as I scrolled through the evidence. "This is insurance," I finished, "for when she finally needs to see the truth. If you show her this, you'll blow up your relationship with your brother. Maybe your whole family." I locked my phone screen, staring at my reflection in the black glass. The woman looking back at me seemed older somehow, harder. "Some things are worth burning bridges for." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "When are you going to tell her?" I thought about Nora's excited face as she showed off that ring. About all the wedding planning she was probably already diving into. About the future she thought she was building. "Not yet," I said finally. "But soon. And when I do, I'm going to make damn sure she can't ignore it anymore." Little did I know then just how explosive that revelation would become, or how many lives it would change forever, including my own. Family dinners at my parents' house had always been tense, but tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way Colin kept checking his phone under the table, or how Mom couldn't stop gushing about wedding plans while Dad beamed with pride at his successful son. To the happy couple, Dad raised his glass of wine, and to finally having Nora officially join our family. I forced myself to smile and lift my glass, watching Colin's practiced grin spread across his face. He'd always been good at playing the part. Speaking of the wedding, Mom chimed in. Colin, dear, have you sorted out the venue deposit? The country club books up so quickly. Colin's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, his expression flickering for just a moment before recovering. Actually, I need to take this call. Work emergency. He stood up, kissing Nora's cheek. Won't be long, babe. As he stepped onto the back patio, I noticed Nora's slight frown. She covered it quickly, turning to Mom to discuss flower arrangements, but I saw it. I'll grab more wine, I announced, heading to the kitchen. Instead of reaching for the bottle, I pressed myself against the wall near the patio door, straining to hear Colin's conversation. Can't talk long. No, tomorrow won't work. Nora's got this whole wedding planning thing. Yeah, I know, but... Look, maybe next week. Of course I miss you too. My hand tightened around my phone in my pocket. I'd started recording the moment he stepped outside. Everything okay in here? Emma's voice made me jump. I hadn't even heard her come in. She'd started attending family dinners since becoming Nora's bridesmaid. I pressed a finger to my lips and gestured to the patio. Emma's eyes widened as she caught the tail end of Colin's conversation. Just be patient, okay? I'll figure something out. Yeah, same spot as last time. The patio door started to open. Emma and I scrambled to look busy with wine bottles as Colin stepped back in. Everything okay at work? I asked innocently. Just some contract issues? He grabbed his wine glass. Nothing I can't handle. Must be nice having such a flexible schedule, I commented. All those business trips, working from home whenever you want. His eyes narrowed slightly. Some of us actually have successful careers, Cam. We can't all work dead-end jobs at non-profits. At least I'm honest about what I do all day. What's that supposed to mean? Nora appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? We're about to serve dessert. Perfect timing. Colin's charm switched back on instantly. I was just telling Cameron about that new project I'm working on. Back at the table, Mum served her signature apple pie while interrogating Nora about wedding details. Have you thought about your something borrowed? I still have my grandmother's pearl necklace. Actually, Nora cut in, I was hoping to borrow Cameron's sapphire earrings. You know, the ones from her graduation. I nearly choked on my pie. Those earrings were my most prized possession, a gift from our grandmother before she passed away. Of course, I managed, though my throat felt tight. Whatever you want. Colin's phone buzzed again. This time I caught a glimpse of the message preview. Miss you already. Same time next. He quickly flipped the phone over, but not before I saw Nora notice it too. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth, then continued as if nothing had happened. After dessert, as everyone was saying goodbyes, Emma pulled me aside. You're really going to let her borrow those earrings? What choice do I have? If I say no, I'm the bitter sister who can't support their happiness. Cam, Emma hesitated. That call earlier. You don't think... I know exactly what I think. I pulled out my phone and played her the recording. And now I have proof. Holy shit. Emma's face paled. What are you going to do? I watched through the window as Colin helped Nora into his car, ever the perfect gentleman. I'm going to do what I should have done months ago. I'm going to find out exactly who he was talking to. Be careful, Emma warned. You're playing with fire. I'm not the one who's going to get burned. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. You're right about your brother. Meet me tomorrow at Cafe Luna, 2 p.m. Come alone. Jay. I showed Emma the message. Her eyes went wide. Jay, you don't think it's... Juliet, I finished. His ex from last year. Looks like I'm not the only one who's been keeping receipts. The game was changing, and for the first time since this whole mess began, I felt like I might actually have a chance to save my best friend from making the biggest mistake of her life. Cafe Luna was quiet at 2 p.m., just a few students with laptops and the occasional business person grabbing late lunch. I spotted Juliet immediately. She hadn't changed much since I'd last seen her at one of Colin's company parties a year ago. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "I wasn't sure you were really who sent the text." I studied her face. "Why now?" Juliet pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Because I saw the engagement announcement on Facebook. She deserves to know what she's getting into." Inside the envelope were hotel receipts, screenshots of text conversations and photos. Lots of photos. My stomach turned as I flipped through them. "These are from last month," Juliet finished. "And the month before that. And the month before that." "You've been seeing him this whole time?" She laughed bitterly. "Not exactly. I've been collecting evidence this whole time. There's a difference." She tapped one of the photos. "That's Sarah from accounting. This one's Rebecca from marketing. And this," she pointed to a blonde I didn't recognize. "This is Melissa. She works at the country club where they're planning to have the wedding." "Jesus Christ, Colin," I muttered. "It gets better." Juliet pulled out her phone. "Watch this." The video showed Colin at what looked like a business dinner, his hand clearly visible on the thigh of a woman who definitely wasn't Nora. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. "How did you get all this?" "Let's just say your brother isn't as clever as he thinks he is, and he's pissed off a lot of women who talk to each other." The cafe door chimed. We both tensed, but it was just Franklin, Colin's business partner, walking in. He froze when he saw us. "Well, well," he said, approaching our table. "This is interesting." "Franklin," Juliet's voice was ice. "Still covering for him?" He glanced between us, then pulled up a chair. "Not anymore. That's actually why I'm here. I assume you got my message about meeting." "That was you?" I asked. "Through Juliet." "Yes. Look, I've spent years making excuses for Colin, redirecting questions, booking separate hotel rooms." He ran a hand through his hair. "I can't do it anymore. Not with this wedding happening." "Why now?" I pressed. "Why do you suddenly care?" "Because Nora's father is investing in our company as a wedding gift, 7 figures. If this blows up after that..." "It's fraud," Juliet finished. Franklin nodded. "Among other things. I've got records of everything. The real hotel bookings, the fake expense reports, even surveillance footage from our office." My phone buzzed. A text from Nora. "Dress fitting tomorrow. Can't wait to see you there." "Shit," I muttered. "The wedding's in 3 weeks. How did this get so far?" "Because Colin's good at what he does," Juliet said. "He makes everyone feel special, like they're the only one who really understands him. Meanwhile," she gestured at the pile of evidence. "I need copies of everything," I said. "And I mean everything." Franklin pulled out a USB drive. "Already done. But Cameron, be careful how you use this. Colin's got a temper when he's cornered." "Don't I know it?" I gathered everything into my bag. "Thank you, both of you." "One more thing," Juliet called as I stood up. "Check his text messages with someone saved as Work Project M. That's Melissa from the country club. They're planning to meet the night before the wedding." My blood ran cold. "The rehearsal dinner?" "Exactly." Outside the cafe, I called Emma. "You're not going to believe what I just got," I said when she answered. "Actually, you're not going to believe what I just heard," she countered. "Nora's talking about moving up the wedding. She wants to do it in 2 weeks instead of 3. "What? Why?" "She's not saying, but..." "Cam, I think she's starting to suspect something. She keeps asking weird questions about Colin's schedule, his business trips." I clutched the envelope tighter. "I need to tell her." "Not yet," Emma said quickly. "Wait until after the dress fitting tomorrow. Let her have that moment at least." I watched a happy couple walk past the cafe, hand in hand, completely oblivious to how quickly perfect lives can unravel. "Okay," I agreed. "But after that, no more waiting. This ends before she says I do." As I hung up, another text came through, this time from Colin. Heard you were asking questions about me at work. Back off, sis. You don't want to play this game. I took a screenshot of the threat and added it to my growing file. Game on, brother, I whispered. Game on. The bridal boutique was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected, all crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes. I sat between Emma and Nora's sister while Nora disappeared into a fitting room with her perfect dress. You're quiet today, Emma whispered. Just thinking about... Oh my God, Nora's voice rang out. It's even more beautiful than I remembered. She emerged in a cascade of white silk and lace, beaming at her reflection. For a moment, I saw the friend I'd grown up with. Before Colin, before all of this. My throat tightened. You look amazing, I managed. I know. She twirled, the dress floating around her. Colin is going to... Her phone buzzed on the side table. I saw her smile falter as she read the message. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, she said quickly. Just work stuff. But her hands smoothed the dress nervously. The boutique door chimed and my mother swept in, fashionably late as usual. Oh, darling, you're absolutely... Is that a text from Colin? Nora snatched her phone away. No, just the florist. Speaking of Colin, Mom continued, oblivious to Nora's discomfort, he's being so secretive about the honeymoon plans. Won't tell anyone where they're going. Isn't that romantic? I caught Emma's eye. We both knew why he was being secretive. The hotel receipts in my bag told a very different story about his honeymoon plans. Actually, Nora said, her voice slightly strained, we should talk about the rehearsal dinner. I think we should change the venue. Change it? Mum looked scandalized. But the country club is perfect. And that lovely event coordinator, what's her name? Melissa? She's been so helpful. I watched the colour drain from Nora's face. Excuse me, she mumbled, gathering her dress. I need some air. I followed her onto the boutique's small balcony, closing the glass door behind us. Want to tell me what's really going on? I asked. I found something, she said quietly. On Colin's phone last night, messages from someone named Work Project M. They were... She took a shaky breath. They were planning to meet during the rehearsal dinner. Nora, don't. She held up a hand. Don't say I told you so. I need to know. Do you have proof? Real proof? Of anything? My bag felt suddenly heavy with its damning contents. This was my chance. Yes, I said. I have everything. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the street below. Show me after the fitting. Not here. Not with your mom and everyone. The door opened and Emma stepped out. They're waiting for you to finish the alterations. Nora straightened her shoulders, wiped her eyes. Right. The show must go on. Back inside, as the seamstress pinned and tucked, my phone lit up with a message from Franklin. Colin knows something's up. He's been asking questions about missing files. Then another from Juliet. Be careful. He just called me, threatening legal action. Cameron? Mom's voice cut through my thoughts. Don't you think the dress is perfect? Absolutely perfect, I echoed, watching Nora's reflection in the mirror. She wasn't smiling anymore. The fitting ended in a flurry of appointments and payment arrangements. As everyone gathered their things, Nora grabbed my arm. My place. 1 hour, she whispered. Bring everything. I nodded. But before I could leave, my phone rang. Colin. Hey, sis. His voice was dangerously calm. Having fun at the fitting. What do you want? Just wanted to remind you about family loyalty. Would be a shame if Mom and Dad found out about those funds you embezzled from the family business 3 years ago. My blood ran cold. That money was rightfully mine. You know that. Do I? Because the paperwork says otherwise. Your choice, Cameron. Back off, or everyone learns what kind of person you really are. The line went dead. Emma found me still staring at my phone. Cam? What's wrong? He's trying to blackmail me. I laughed hollowly, as if that would stop me now. Are you still going to Nora's? I thought about the evidence in my bag, about Nora's face when she mentioned those messages, about Colin's threats. Yes, I said firmly. It's time. As I left the boutique, one final text came through, from Nora. Actually, don't come over. I've decided I don't want to know. The wedding's in 2 weeks. Let's just get through it. I typed back. Are you sure that's what you want? Her response was immediate. What I want is for my maid of honor to support me. Can you do that? Or not? Looking at her message, I made my decision. Sometimes being a true friend means doing the hard thing, even when they beg you not to. I'll see you at the wedding, I replied, knowing exactly what I had to do. The church bells chimed noon as I adjusted my maid of honor dress in the mirror. The blue silk felt like armor. I'd need it for what was coming. My bag sat heavily on the dressing room chair, loaded with everything I'd gathered over the past months. You look beautiful, Emma said from the doorway. Are you really going to go through with this? Did you see her this morning? She's terrified. She knows something's wrong. Cameron. Emma closed the door behind her. Colin's been asking about you. He cornered me in the parking lot wanting to know what you're planning. Let him ask. I pulled out my phone, checking the time. Where's Nora now? Getting her makeup done. She's barely said 2 words all morning. A knock at the door made us both jump. It was Franklin. She's here, he said quietly. Melissa. I just saw her talking to Colin behind the church. On their wedding day, Emma whispered. He wouldn't. He already did. I pulled up the security camera footage on my phone, Colin and Melissa in a heated embrace just 20 minutes ago. The camera's still running in case we need more. Another knock, more insistent this time. My mother burst in. Cameron, what are you doing hiding in here? The photographer wants pictures of the bridal party, and are you crying? I hadn't even realized there were tears on my cheeks. Just emotional, Mom. Give me a minute. She hesitated then. Your brother's looking for you. He seems upset about something. I bet he does, I muttered as she left. Emma squeezed my hand. Last chance to back out. No. I wiped my eyes carefully. No backing out now. The next hour passed in a blur of photos and fake smiles. Nora avoided my eyes the entire time, but I caught her watching the door every time it opened, flinching at every sound. Then it was time. The wedding march began to play. I walked down the aisle first, clutching my bouquet, very aware of the USB drive hidden inside it. Colin stood at the altar, the picture of innocence in his tuxedo. Our eyes met. His narrowed slightly. The music swelled. Everyone stood. Nora appeared in the doorway, radiant in white. Her father led her forward, step by step, toward the man I knew would destroy her. Dearly beloved, the priest began. I scanned the crowd. Juliet was there, 3 rows back, just as planned. Franklin sat near the front, his laptop open on his lap, ready. Emma stood beside me, her hand brushing against my arm in silent support. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, my heart pounded. Not yet. Not here. The ceremony continued. Vows were exchanged. Nora's voice shook as she promised faithfulness. Collins didn't waver at all. He'd had plenty of practice lying. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The crowd cheered. I forced myself to smile, to hug them both, to play my part. See you at the reception, sis, Colin whispered in my ear, assuming you're still planning to attend. Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world. The reception hall was decorated like a fairy tale. All white flowers and twinkling lights. I watched Melissa direct the catering staff, pretending she hadn't been kissing the groom hours earlier. When? Emma asked as we took our seats at the head table. After the first dance, during my speech. Nora and Colin took the floor for their first dance. She was stiff in his arms, her smile fixed. His phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. I saw her notice, saw her face fall for just a moment. The dance ended. Dinner was served. Then it was time for speeches. I stood, champagne glass in hand, and approached the microphone. Colin's smug smile faltered slightly. When Nora asked me to be her maid of honor, I began, I was thrilled. She's been my best friend since college, and now she's my sister-in-law. Family. Nora wouldn't look at me. She knew what was coming. But family, I continued, means being honest with each other, It means protecting the people we love, even when it hurts, even when they don't want to hear it. I pulled the USB drive from my bouquet. Nora, I know you told me to let it go, to just get through today, but I can't watch you build a life on lies. Colin stood up. Cameron, don't... Franklin, I called out. Would you do the honors? Franklin's laptop connected to the projection screen. The first image appeared. Colin and Melissa behind the church just hours ago. The room erupted in gasps. Nora's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. And that was just the beginning. The images kept coming. Hotel receipts, text messages, security footage, each one a nail in the coffin of Colin's lies. Turn it off, Colin demanded, his face red. This is ridiculous. Is it? I clicked to the next slide. Here's you last week with Sarah, and the week before with Rebecca. Oh, and let's not forget your special friend Melissa, who's currently trying to sneak out the back door. All eyes turned to Melissa, frozen halfway to the exit. Nora, Colin turned to his bride. Baby, I can explain. Explain? Nora's voice was eerily calm. Explain the lipstick on your collar this morning? The mysterious texts? The business trips that never quite added up? She stood up slowly, her white dress catching the light. Or maybe explain why you were planning to meet Melissa tonight after our wedding? The room went dead silent. You knew, Colin stammered. I knew something was wrong, Nora's voice cracked. I wanted so badly to be wrong. That's enough, my mother shouted, standing up. Cameron, you're ruining their special day. No, Mom, I pointed to the screen. Colin ruined it when he couldn't keep it in his pants. Even today, even on his wedding day. Franklin stepped forward. I have the financial records too, Mrs. Palmer. The company funds he's been using to finance these encounters. You're all crazy, Colin snarled. Nora, don't listen to them. They're just jealous of what we have. What we have? Nora laughed, a harsh, broken sound. What we have is a marriage that didn't even last 6 hours. What we have is a lie. She turned to face the crowd. Did you all know? How many of you saw him with other women and said nothing? How many of you helped him hide it? Guilty faces looked away. Others whispered among themselves. I tried to tell you, I said softly. That day at my apartment, I remember. Nora cut me off. I called you jealous, said you couldn't handle your brother's happiness. She turned back to Colin. But she wasn't jealous, was she? She was right. This is all very entertaining, Colin sneered. But you have no proof these photos are even recent, for all anyone knows. The metadata doesn't lie, Franklin interrupted, pulling up timestamps. Neither does the GPS tracking on your company phone, or the credit card statements, or the hotel security footage from this morning. Juliet stood up from her seat. Or the child support payments you've been hiding. The room erupted again. My mother collapsed into my father's arms. Child support? Nora's voice was barely a whisper. 9 months ago, Juliet confirmed. I tried to tell you, but you blocked my number. Colin lunged for the laptop, but Franklin was faster, backing away with the evidence safely in hand. You're all going to regret this, Colin threatened. Every single one of you. I'll sue. Sue who? I challenged. Franklin, for having proof you misused company funds. Juliet, for keeping receipts of your child support. Me, for showing your wife who you really are. You bitch, he spat. You're not even my real sister. You're just some kid my parents took pity on. The slap echoed through the hall. Nora stood there, hand still raised, her wedding ring catching the light one last time before she pulled it off and threw it at him. We're done, she declared. The marriage is annulled. The investment deal is off. Everything is off. She turned to me, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Don't, I started, but she was already running for the door, her white dress billowing behind her. Emma moved to follow, but I stopped her. Let her go. She needs a minute. The room descended into chaos. Guests began gathering their things, muttering about scandal and shame. My mother was sobbing dramatically while my father tried to calm her. Melissa had finally managed to slip away, along with several other women I recognized from the evidence. Colin stood alone at the head table, his perfect world crumbling around him. "Happy wedding day, brother," I said, gathering my things. "This isn't over," he growled. "Actually, it is." I held up my phone. "I've been recording everything. Every threat, every lie, every moment of this disaster. It's already uploading to the cloud, so unless you want the whole world to see who you really are, I suggest you let Nora go. Let her move on. Let her be happy." "You've destroyed this family." "No," I corrected him. "You did that all by yourself." As I walked away, Emma fell into step beside me. "That was intense." "It's not over yet," I said, checking my phone. "Nora's going to need us when the shock wears off." "And Colin?" I looked back at my brother, still standing alone in his ruined reception. Karma's finally caught up with him. Now he has to live with it. The church bells chimed again, marking the end of what should have been the happiest day of Nora's life. Instead, it had become her first day of freedom. We found Nora in the church garden sitting on a stone bench, her wedding dress pulled around her like spilled milk. Emma reached her first. "Don't," Nora said before either of us could speak. "Don't ask if I'm okay." "Wasn't going to," I said, sitting beside her. "I was going to ask if you want to help me burn all his stuff." A laugh bubbled up through her tears. "God, I'm such an idiot." "No," Emma said firmly. "You're someone who wanted to believe in love. He's the idiot who threw it away." The garden door burst open. Juliet stood there, slightly out of breath. "You need to come back. Now." "I'm not going anywhere near him," Nora started. "It's not about Colin. It's your father. He's confronting Franklin about the company investment." We rushed back to find the reception hall had devolved into something between a business meeting and a Jerry Springer episode. Nora's father had Franklin cornered by the cake table. "Those funds were already transferred," he was shouting. "7 figures, into your company account. Actually," Franklin pulled out his phone, "the transfer was scheduled for Monday, after the wedding. I stopped it this morning." "You had no right." "I had every right," Franklin cut in. "As CFO, it's my job to prevent fraud. And investing under false pretenses, that's fraud." "False pretenses?" Nora's father turned to find her standing there. "Princess, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them you and Colin can work this out." "Work what out, Dad?" Nora's voice cracked. "The cheating? The lies? The baby he has with another woman? Every marriage has problems." "This isn't problems," she exploded. "This is my whole life being a lie, and you're worried about money?" The room fell silent. Even the remaining guests stopped their gossiping to watch. "The company investment is cancelled," Nora continued, her voice stronger now. "The marriage is over, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can leave. Now." As if on cue, Colin chose that moment to return, flanked by my parents. "Nobody's going anywhere," he announced. "This is all just a misunderstanding. Nora, baby, let's talk about this privately." "There's nothing to talk about," she said. "It's over." "Over?" my mother scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. Every marriage has its rough patches." "Rough patches?" I couldn't help laughing. "Mom, he has a secret child. He was kissing another woman hours ago. Behind the church." "You stay out of this," Colin snapped. "This is all your fault anyway, always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." "My fault?" I stepped forward. "Was it my fault you slept with Sarah, with Rebecca, with half the women in this room?" "You're exaggerating." "Am I?" I turned to the remaining guests. "Anyone else want to share their Colin story? Now's the time." 3 women stood up. Then another. And another. "Last Christmas," one began. "2 months ago at the Riverside Hotel," said another. "Last week," a third added. He said he was single. Each confession hit Nora like a physical blow, but she stayed standing, chin high. "I want you out of my house by tomorrow," she told Colin. "All your things packed. Any gifts returned. The ring sold. I never want to see you again." "You can't do this." "Actually," Franklin stepped forward, "she can. And unless you want the board to know exactly how you've been spending company money, I suggest you do exactly what she says. Colin's face went from red to purple. He turned to our parents. Are you going to let them do this to me? Your own son. But even they looked uncertain now, faced with the mounting evidence and testimonies. Perhaps, my father said slowly, we should discuss this at home. Discuss what? Colin shouted. How my sister ruined my life, how she turned everyone against me. No, my father's voice was firm. We're going to discuss how you ruined your own life and how you're going to fix it. The fight seemed to drain out of Colin all at once. He looked around the room, at the disgusted faces, at Franklin with his evidence, at Nora in her ruined wedding dress, and finally seemed to understand what he'd lost. This isn't over, he muttered, but the threat sounded hollow now. Yes, it is, Nora said quietly. Goodbye, Colin. He left with our parents, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The remaining guests began to filter out, leaving just our small group, me, Nora, Emma, Franklin, and Juliet. So, Emma broke the silence, about that stuff-burning idea. Nora wiped her eyes, smearing expensive makeup. You know what? That sounds perfect right now. First, I said, let's get you out of that dress. She looked down at the white fabric, now dirty and torn. I paid a fortune for this thing. Want to burn it too? For the first time all day, Nora smiled. Really smiled. Absolutely. The bonfire crackled in Nora's backyard, flames dancing against the night sky. The wedding dress went in first, followed by Colin's forgotten tuxedo jacket, photos and various gifts he'd given her over the years. I kept everything, Nora explained, tossing another photo into the flames. Every receipt, every suspicious text I screenshot, every weird feeling I pushed down. I thought I was being paranoid. You weren't paranoid enough, Juliet said, passing her a glass of wine. Trust me, I learned that lesson too. Emma appeared with marshmallows and graham crackers. Who says we can't have s'mores at a divorce party? It's not technically a divorce, Franklin corrected, accepting a marshmallow. The marriage is being annulled, like it never happened. Good. Nora pulled off her engagement ring, the last reminder, because I never want to think about this day again. My phone buzzed. Colin calling for the 10th time. I declined it. He's been texting me too, Franklin said, threatening lawsuits, begging for help, the usual. Can he actually sue? Emma asked. He can try. Franklin shrugged. But the evidence speaks for itself. The company board is meeting Monday to discuss his position. What about the baby? I asked Juliet. Sarah's handling that. She's got a good lawyer, plenty of proof. He won't be able to hide from his responsibilities anymore. Nora stood suddenly. I need to get something. She disappeared into the house, returning with a familiar blue box. My grandmother's sapphire earrings. These belong to you, she said, holding them out. I'm sorry I ever asked to borrow them. Keep them, I said. Cameron, no, not forever. Just hold on to them for me until you're ready to be my friend again. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. You believed what you wanted to believe. We all do sometimes. Not anymore. She squared her shoulders. From now on, I believe in the truth, no matter how much it hurts. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Mom. Your brother's devastated. How could you do this to family? I showed it to the group. Reply with the video of him and Melissa, Emma suggested. No, I said, typing. Family doesn't let family destroy lives with lies. When you're ready to face the truth, call me. Speaking of truth, Franklin pulled out his laptop. The story's already hitting social media. Want to see what people are saying? God, no, Nora groaned. I can't handle that right now. Actually, he turned the screen, most people are on your side. Wedding karma is trending. We crowded around to look. Hundreds of messages of support, women sharing similar stories, even a few marriage counselors offering free consultations. See? Emma nudged Nora. You're not alone. I never was, Nora said softly. I just couldn't see it. A car door slammed out front. Colin's voice carried over the fence. I know you're in there. Want me to call the police? Franklin offered. No need. Nora stood brushing off her jeans. I've got this. We followed her to the front yard. Colin stood there, dishevelled and desperate. Baby, please, he started. Don't baby me. Nora's voice was steel. You have until noon tomorrow to get your things. Anything left goes in the bonfire. You can't just throw away our whole relationship. What relationship? She laughed. The one where you cheated constantly? Had a secret child? Used me to get my father's money? I love you. No, you love yourself. And that's your problem now, not mine. She turned to go back inside. Colin grabbed her arm. Let go, I warned, stepping forward. Or what? He sneered. You'll ruin my life more than you already have. No, Nora said calmly. I'll press charges for assault. Franklin's recording everything on his phone, by the way. Wavy to the camera, Colin. He dropped her arm like it burned. Noon tomorrow, she repeated. After that, anything left burns, including your reputation if you ever come near me again. Back inside, Nora didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just smiled. A real free smile. You know what? She said. I think I'm going to be okay. Better than okay, Emma corrected. You're going to be amazing. We heard Colin's car speed away, but nobody flinched. The bonfire still crackled outside, consuming the last pieces of Nora's almost marriage. To truth, Franklin raised his glass. To karma, Juliet added. To freedom, Nora said. To real family, I finished, looking at our odd little group. The kind that tells you the truth, even when it hurts. We clinked glasses as the last wedding photo curled and burned in the flames, taking with it the final remnants of Colin's perfectly crafted lies. Sometimes the truth hurts, but lies destroy. And in the end, karma always collects its dues.
The gentle early summer sunlight enveloped the quiet residential area in the Boston suburbs. In my White House facing Commonwealth Avenue, I was rushing through my morning preparations. The light streaming through the kitchen window gleamed brilliantly on the polished counter. Mom, is Dad coming to my game today? Nathan asked while adjusting his uniform collar. His innocent eyes made me hesitate for a moment. Andrew, my husband, had been attending fewer of our son's baseball games lately. Well, Dad seems to be busy, I replied vaguely while packing sandwiches in our son's lunchbox. Nathan is 8 years old, but he's grown into such a thoughtful, kind child, more mature than you'd expect from a second grader. He's especially good at math and often receives praise from his teachers. On his baseball team, he's well liked by his teammates. Our mornings at home always start at 7 o'clock. I prepare breakfast and send Nathan off to school at 8 o'clock. Then from 9 to 6 o'clock, I spend my time at my flower shop, Blooming Days. My husband used to return home by 7 p.m., but lately, he's been coming home later and later. While opening the flower shop's shutters, I found myself remembering our first meeting 10 years ago. It was right here that I first met Andrew. He had come to order flowers for his twin brother James's hospital opening celebration. He was a businessman in a perfectly pressed suit, giving off a meticulous impression. I still remember the moment he smiled while looking at the white Casablanca lilies, saying, "My brother loves pure white flowers." 3 months later, we decided to get married. Back then, Andrew was earnestly working as a promising partner at a local major accounting firm, Mitchell and Associates. The first 5 years after our marriage were filled with incomparable happiness. Nathan's birth deepened our bond even further. My mother-in-law Eleanor was genuinely delighted with our marriage. We always had Sunday family dinners together, enjoying wonderful times with James joining us. James, working as an emergency physician at Boston General Hospital, doted on his nephew Nathan as if he were his own son. Despite being twin brothers, James and Andrew had opposite personalities. James was more emotionally expressive and family-oriented, while Andrew was meticulous and sometimes almost too level-headed. However, everything began to change 6 months ago when Eleanor passed away. An invisible rift formed between the brothers over the inheritance, and family gatherings became less frequent. Andrew said work was getting busier, and his return time gradually got later. He started working more on holidays too, and time with family definitely decreased. Our weekends changed dramatically as well. He began missing our son's baseball games, which he had never skipped before, and family meals became rare. Through all this, only James continued to watch Nathan's games with us, supporting us with his unchanging kindness. While preparing to open the flower shop, I gazed at the colorful flowers arranged throughout the store. After graduating college, opening this flower shop had been my dream. Adding flower meanings to help deliver customers' precious feelings, that was my pride. While doing flower arrangements, I suddenly realized something. The days when Andrew would compliment me, saying, "Your bouquets are like magic," now feel like distant memories. I felt something off about Andrew, who seemed to be playing the role of a perfect husband and father on the surface. I had always known about his show-off personality and taste for luxury, but lately, these tendencies seemed to be getting stronger. The pure white petals of the Casablanca lilies displayed at the storefront sparkle in the morning light. Wednesday's flower procurement is my important routine. After buying groceries at Whole Foods Market, I stop by the Boston Flower Market. Seeing the fresh flowers always helps me feel at peace. While making flower meaning cards for Nathan, I think about his growth. Recently, he's started remembering flower names and occasionally helps mind the store. Mrs. Wilson from Sacred Heart Church always praises his adorable customer service whenever she visits. He attends Sunday school at church and seems to have fun surrounded by many friends. Baseball practice at Cold Spring Park. On Saturday mornings, Nathan is the first to grab his glove and start playing catch with James. Andrew used to join them too. Recently, he's always dressed in luxury brand suits and never puts down his mobile phone, even on holidays. He rarely shows up at Ward Elementary School's parent meetings anymore. Looking at the tree-lined Commonwealth Avenue, I let out a deep sigh. My wedding ring sparkles in the morning sun. Our story, which began through these flowers 10 years ago, was about to take a new turn. Boston College's clock tower strikes 8 o'clock in the distance. At this moment, we had no way of knowing about the terrible fate awaiting our family. Yesterday was Saturday, normally a day when we would watch our son's baseball game as a family. The sun was high from the morning, and a refreshing breeze swept through Cold Spring Park's grounds. However, that morning, Andrew unusually announced he would cancel all weekend plans. "Sorry, I have to review some important documents today. I'll definitely come to the next game." Nathan showed a slightly lonely expression but simply answered, "Okay." Lately, our son seemed to be learning to accept his father's absence. Seeing this broke my heart. Andrew holed up in his study, facing documents all day. Though he was always meticulous by nature, this day he seemed unusually nervous. He never let go of his mobile phone, and occasionally I could hear him speaking quietly with someone. He even refused lunch, saying, "I'll eat later," and didn't open the door until evening. That night, concerned about my husband's behavior, I stopped in front of his study. I could hear his mobile phone conversation from inside. "Yes, everything's going smoothly. I've prepared everything perfectly for tomorrow." There was a coldness in his voice that I'd never felt from my husband before. And when I woke up this morning, the aroma of coffee was wafting from the kitchen. Surprisingly, Andrew was preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Kate." My husband smiled at me with a gentler tone than usual. On the table were freshly baked croissants and scrambled eggs. It was as if yesterday's puzzling behavior had been a lie. "I'll make a special dinner tonight. I haven't been able to spend much time with the family lately because of work." Nathan's face lit up at those words. "Wow, Dad's cooking." After breakfast, I started the flower shop's business as usual. With the changing season, I needed to update the store's displays. While creating arrangements highlighting the vibrant colors of hydrangeas, I was fighting an unsettling feeling. Around 2 p.m., I received a message from Andrew. "I'll be home at 7 o'clock tonight. Look forward to it." A message that would normally warm my heart felt strangely unnatural today. It was abnormal for my husband to say he would cook in the first place. In our 10 years of marriage, he had only been in the kitchen a handful of times. At 6:30 p.m., I went to pick up Nathan. My son, finished with his after-school program at Ward Elementary School, was in an even better mood than usual. He kept asking, "Mom, is Dad really going to cook for us?" When we arrived home, warm light was seeping from the entrance. The living room chandelier was softly glowing, and an unfamiliar expensive-looking tablecloth was spread on the table. The dishes we had just bought from Pottery Barn were carefully set out. From the kitchen came the aroma of New England clam chowder. Homemade focaccia seemed to be baking as well. And yet, why? This abnormal perfection stirred up my anxiety. Andrew's behavior was somehow different from usual too. He used the knife with unfamiliar movements, occasionally checking the recipe. Though his expression seemed peaceful, there was obvious tension in his gestures. What particularly concerned me was his habit of checking the clock every 3 minutes. "It'll be ready in about 30 minutes. Saying this, he picked up his smartphone again. His expression tensed for just a moment at some message that had arrived on the screen. While helping with our son's homework, I observed my husband's movements in the kitchen. The sound of putting down the knife, stirring the pot, checking the oven temperature, everything felt unnaturally careful and calculated. "Mom, Dad's soup smells delicious," Nathan said with an innocent smile. At that moment, a chill ran down my spine. My intuition told me that some terrible intention was hidden behind these overly perfect dinner preparations. On the dining table, the candlelight flickered quietly. The steam rising from Andrew's New England clam chowder created a fantastical scene in the warm lighting. The homemade focaccia had a perfect golden color, and the salad made with local vegetables was visually stunning. "Please, have a seat." There was a strain in Andrew's voice. The soup poured into the expensive Pottery Barn dishes looked just like something from a restaurant. Why would my husband, who had always been distant from cooking, prepare such an elaborate meal? That sense of incongruity unsettled my heart. Wow, amazing. I can't believe Dad made this. Nathan sat at the table with an innocent smile. Boston College's old clock announced 7:15. Today is a special day, after all. As Andrew smiled saying this, I felt a momentary glimpse of the old gentleness I remembered. Just like how he was when we met 10 years ago. However, something lurking behind that smile triggered my intuition. The spoon touches the soup. A warm saltiness spreads through my mouth. It was definitely skillfully made. And yet, this perfection only heightened my anxiety. Hey Dad, did you really make this yourself? Yes, following the recipe. Do you like it? The conversation seemed to flow naturally. However, I noticed Andrew's left hand unconsciously touching his smartphone. It was about 10 minutes after we started eating when I first noticed something was wrong. Nathan was the first to sense it. Mom. I feel sick. My son's voice was trembling. Right after that, I was hit with severe dizziness. My vision began to distort, and the sensation in my limbs started to dull. Nathan. The moment I tried to stand up, my knees gave out. I fell to my knees on the living room floor and lay there. Right next to me, Nathan had fallen in the same way. Dad, help. My son's pleading voice. However, Andrew didn't even stand up. Rather, he seemed to be watching calmly. There was no longer a trace of warmth in his expression. I was still conscious but instinctively closed my eyes and pretended to be unconscious. Nathan seemed to be copying me. My smart son might have intuitively understood the abnormality of the situation. At that moment, Andrew's mobile phone rang. Yes, it's done. They'll both be gone soon. A matter-of-fact tone. As if he were making a routine business report. Yes, everything's going according to plan. Leave the rest to me. After hanging up the phone, Andrew left, his footsteps heading toward the study. Waiting for that moment, I whispered to my son. Nathan, don't move. Opening my eyelids slightly, I could see my son give a small nod. My clever child was following my instructions perfectly. The second hand of the living room clock ticks forward with cruel slowness. Car lights from Commonwealth Avenue occasionally shine through the windows. The street's usual comfortable bustle now only heightened the unusual tension. We lay there as if time had stopped. I could feel Nathan's small body trembling slightly. But he was enduring desperately. His courage brought tears to my heart. From the study came intermittent sounds of papers being put through a shredder. Between these sounds, Andrew's mobile phone conversations leaked through. Yes, they're not moving anymore. The effect is certain. I felt my spine freeze. My husband was observing us from afar. He didn't try to come closer to check. That was fortunate in our misfortune. Outside the window, the sun had completely set, and darkness was deepening. The candle on the table was still quietly burning. Its light cast the shadows of the fallen mother and child on the wall, as if foretelling the tragedy about to unfold. I could feel my husband's cold gaze occasionally thrown from the living room entrance on my back. While holding my breath, I desperately tried to think. Why would my husband plan this far? Was it just for the inheritance, or was there another reason? Next to me, I could feel Nathan's small body trembling slightly. As a mother, I felt both pride and guilt that an 8-year-old boy could maintain his composure in this extreme situation. I could see a single bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. He must be fighting against his fear. The air in the room gradually grew heavier. The food on the table had gone cold. What was once a symbol of our warm home had now become an instrument of poisoning. The shadows cast by the chandelier's light created eerie patterns on the wall. The clock's second hand moves forward mercilessly, as if counting down the remaining time of our lives. Each time headlights from cars on Commonwealth Avenue illuminated the window, I prayed for someone to come help us. But the quietness of this luxury residential area would perfectly muffle our screams. Andrew's footsteps approached. I tightly closed my eyelids and regulated my breathing. He returned to the living room and stood there for a while. His presence loomed over us like a cold shadow. The husband who once showed me love had now transformed into a death god watching over our demise. Just a little longer. Andrew's voice muttering to himself. It was the voice of my husband of 10 years, yet simultaneously seemed like the voice of a stranger. The distant bells of Boston College added an eerie resonance to this nightmare-like reality. Lying on the floor, I concentrated all my attention on my husband's movements. The sound of the shredder from the study seemed to be cutting up our 10 years of memories. The sound of opening cabinet drawers, organizing documents. What these meant was clear. Andrew was rushing to destroy evidence. The large grandfather clock in the corner slowly struck 9. Its weighty sound made this surreal situation even more pronounced. The streetlights from Commonwealth Avenue shone through the window, casting our fallen shadows eerily on the wall. "Mom." Nathan's whisper was as faint as an exhale. With my eyes still closed, I tightly gripped his hand. "It's okay. Mom will definitely protect you." My smartphone was still left on the dining table. The screen was dark, but the recording app should have been active for the past 20 minutes. All of my husband's phone conversations, the sound of the shredder, everything should be recorded. Another gamble was the SOS message I sent to James. Before dinner, struck by an ominous feeling, I had sent a brief message to my brother-in-law. "If you lose contact with me tonight, come to the house immediately." From the study came the sound of suitcase wheels rolling across the floor. Then, the sound of drawers opening and closing. He was clearly packing. Between these sounds, Andrew continued his phone conversations. "Yes, it will be over soon. By tomorrow morning, everything will be taken care of." That voice contained not a trace of the warmth I once loved in my husband. I could feel Nathan's body trembling in small spasms. This situation was too harsh for an 8-year-old boy. Still, he perfectly followed my instructions. His courage filled me with pride and deep love. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. That sound instantly cut through the frozen air. Andrew's movements in the study stopped. Then, hurried footsteps. The sound of shoes descending the stairs echoed louder than usual. Who could it be at this hour? A voice tinged with irritation, different from his usual composed tone. Footsteps heading to the entrance. The sound of the door opening. "Andrew, what's wrong? Why aren't you answering your phone?" It was James's voice. And he wasn't alone. multiple shadows could be seen behind him. "James, why are you here? And who are these people?" Andrew's voice couldn't hide his agitation. "I requested them." With a clear voice, I rose from the floor. Nathan stood up following me. At the entrance stood James along with 3 police officers. "Kate. Nathan. You both." The blood drained from Andrew's face. "I knew about your plan from the start." I picked up my smartphone from the table. Its screen contained decisive evidence of my husband's crime. The suspicious shopping at Whole Foods Market, frequent calls with unknown numbers, and everything from tonight. "Kate, that's... Everything is recorded. From the sound of you making the poisoned food to your phone conversations." James stepped forward. "Brother, your unusual behavior has concerned me for months. Your obsessive attitude about mother's inheritance. And your relationship with Sarah Collins. Wait, I can explain this." At that moment, Andrew's smartphone rang. We all saw the name displayed on the incoming call screen. Sarah Collins. The name of his young subordinate. And in his call history were records of repeated calls with her throughout tonight. "We know everything about your plans to move to Dubai with your young lover using mother's inheritance. All of it." At James's words, Andrew's shoulders slumped. The memories of my flower shop that I wanted to protect, weekends playing baseball with our son, and the promise to mother-in-law, everything made sense in this moment. Outside the window, police sirens were approaching. Their sound rang discordantly through the quiet night on Commonwealth Avenue. Boston College's clock tower was striking 10. No one else would die tonight. The bells of Sacred Heart Church rang in the distance, their sound seeming to bless our salvation. Nathan clung to me, his small body still trembling. Yet, there was unmistakable relief in his eyes. "Ma'am, we'll need to take your statement." I slowly nodded at the police officer's words. The chandelier's light in the living room warmly enveloped us, as if predicting a bright future. James watched over us silently. His eyes held deep sadness, but even more love. He had always been our family's true guardian. "Mother would be proud," he said quietly. I couldn't hold back my tears at his words. The family bonds that Eleanor had cherished were about to be reborn in a new form. The trees along Commonwealth Avenue rustled quietly in the night breeze. That night, in the Boston Police Station interrogation room, all the truth came to light. Night was falling outside, and the streetlights on Commonwealth Avenue swayed gently. Nathan was receiving care from a child psychologist in the next room. Here are all the recorded conversations. When I handed my smartphone to the investigator, Andrew's fate was sealed. They said he was maintaining his silence in the adjacent interrogation room. However, there was already sufficient evidence. James explained the course of events with a heavy expression. "I first noticed something 3 months ago. During a routine checkup at the hospital, I accidentally overheard Andrew's suspicious conversation. Massive embezzlement at the accounting firm Mitchell & Associates, an affair with his young subordinate Sarah Collins, and plans to move to Dubai. His gambling debts exceeded $1 million, further inflated by collections of luxury sports cars and brand items. Eleanor's inheritance of $50 million was his solution to everything. The events of that night had actually been under close surveillance. After receiving my SOS message, James had coordinated with the police. An emergency medical team was also standing by in case of the worst. The interrogation continued until early morning, and we began temporary refuge at James's house. The following days felt like being in the midst of a storm. The arrests of Andrew and Sarah shocked the local community, and combined with the firm's embezzlement case, it was widely reported in local media. And now, a month later, at Cold Spring Park in early summer. On the fresh green grass, Nathan was playing catch with James. Following our suggestion, the inheritance would be donated to Boston College's scholarship program. We knew Eleanor had a deep interest in supporting education during her lifetime. The Sacred Heart Church community continues to support us warmly. Nathan is continuing his weekly counseling, and we're receiving positive reports from his therapist. His grades at Ward Elementary School remain excellent, making me proud as his mother. "Hey, Mom." Nathan sat beside me, sweat glistening on his forehead as he carefully held his baseball glove. "Are you still scared of Dad?" The unexpected question made me pause for a moment. But looking into my son's clear eyes, I answered quietly. "No, I'm not scared. Because we have our real family, you, Uncle James, and Grandma in heaven." Today, as always, colorful flowers bloom in blooming days. The white Casablanca lilies no longer evoke sad memories. They have now become a symbol of new hope. Next weekend is an important game for Nathan's baseball team, the Newton Stars. As we watch from the stands, I'm sure Eleanor's gentle gaze will be with us too. Sometimes family isn't just about blood ties. I believe that true bonds grow stronger and deeper beyond these trials. Our new story has only just begun. In her second-floor study of the New England Colonial House on Commonwealth Avenue in Newton, a Boston suburb, Rachel was doing a final check on a logo design for her new client. The soft spring sunlight streaming through the window gently illuminated the family photo on her desk. In her 7th year as a freelance graphic designer, working from home had been the perfect choice to balance her work with raising her daughter. "Mama, look, look." Emma's voice echoed from downstairs. Rachel saved her work-in-progress design and headed down the stairs. In the white-themed living room, 7-year-old Emma was drawing something on a large piece of paper. Her daughter, who had just started 2nd grade, had inherited her mother's artistic sense. "What are you drawing?" "The sea in nice. I'm swimming with dolphins." Emma proudly held up her picture. On the blue waves, she had drawn a self-portrait with a smile and dolphins. In the art corner, various colored papers and paints that Rachel had bought for her were neatly arranged. Her artistic talent was undoubtedly inherited from her mother. Rachel hugged her daughter's shoulders and praised her. "That's a lovely picture." As spring sunlight brightly lit the room, Emma was absorbed in her drawing. Since starting at the local public elementary school, her artwork had become increasingly vibrant. Her teacher, Ms. Brown, highly praised Emma's artistic talent. At 6 p.m., they heard the front door open. "I'm home." Michael had returned. Though busy running his construction company, he always made sure to come home at a regular time. Still in his navy suit, having come straight from the site, he first kissed Emma's cheek, then gently embraced Rachel's shoulders. "Welcome home. Daddy, welcome back. I drew a new picture." The family of 3 gathered around the dinner table. Tonight's dinner was macaroni and cheese, made by Rachel at Emma's request. As the warm aroma of food filled the room, Emma happily talked about her day at school. This happy dining scene had remained unchanged since Rachel met Michael 5 years ago. After dinner, Michael helped Emma with her homework. While father and daughter worked on math problems, Rachel cleaned up the dishes, reflecting on their journey. She thought about her struggles as a single mother, meeting Michael at a friend's wedding, and growing closer through their shared hobby of photography. Most importantly, how Michael had loved Emma as his own daughter. After their marriage 3 years ago, they had built an ideal family life. On weekends, they would go on picnics to nearby Boston Common or enjoy baseball games at Fenway Park. Michael was an avid Red Sox fan and deepened his parent-child bond through sports, teaching Emma the rules of baseball. Once a month, it had become customary for the whole family to gather at Michael's parents' home for dinner. On those days, Emma would wear a special outfit, eagerly anticipating seeing her grandparents. Though Rachel had initially felt nervous about these traditional family gatherings, they had now become precious moments of memories. Her sister-in-law, Beth Turner, was a successful career woman working as an investment advisor, and always treated Emma kindly. She would take her shopping at the Prudential Center or treat her to dinner at Legal Seafoods, being the ideal aunt. Single Beth cherished the time she spent with Emma between her work commitments. Dorothy, Michael's mother and a former high school teacher, had a strict personality and strong views on education, but she rejoiced in Emma's growth more than anyone. During holidays, she would cook together with Emma or show her old photo albums, treasuring time with her granddaughter. Having lost her husband early, she valued family bonds above all else. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Rachel and Michael relaxed in the living room. Sitting on the sofa by the fireplace, sipping wine and sharing the day's events, this was their precious ritual. Beth called. She said the photos from Mom and Dad's anniversary party turned out really well. Last weekend, the Turner family had celebrated their parents' 40th wedding anniversary. The family photos Rachel had taken were to be displayed on the living room wall. She had paid attention to every detail, from composition to lighting. Yes, everyone had such lovely smiles. Indeed, the family in the photos looked happy. Beth smiled elegantly next to Dorothy, and Emma showed an innocent smile while staying close to her grandmother. However, somewhere in Rachel's heart, a slight sense of unease was growing. She couldn't yet identify what it was. It felt like a hesitation about this too-perfect family scene. Michael wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and Rachel leaned into his warmth. Tomorrow would surely bring another peaceful day. Emma, we're going to take your passport photo. Saturday morning, Rachel took her daughter to CVS Pharmacy. The spring Boston streetscape still had a chilly breeze, but the sunlight was definitely getting warmer. The Turner family vacation plan was suddenly announced 2 months ago at the Christmas dinner table. Dorothy declared she would cover everyone's travel expenses and proposed a week stay in Nice, France. "Let's create the best memories together as a family," she had said, moving everyone. While taking the passport photo, Emma excitedly continued with her questions. "Mama, how blue is the sea in Nice? Can we really see dolphins up close? You promised to buy me a new swimsuit, remember?" Rachel carefully answered each of her daughter's questions while remembering her own excitement when she first flew on an airplane. That afternoon, they filled out passport application forms with Michael. Government procedures required careful attention. Emma's documents, in particular, needed both parents' signatures and more thorough verification. "I think the process will go smoothly," Michael said while reviewing the documents. "Beth introduced us to someone she knows in the office." Indeed, Beth had been the most actively helpful with travel preparations. From booking the luxury resort hotel to arranging local activities, she was managing everything. "It's the finest hotel," Beth had enthusiastically explained at the recent family meeting. "I've booked 2 ocean view rooms. There's a private beach, top-class spa, and I've even reserved a whale-watching tour." Dorothy nodded with satisfaction at her daughter's efficiency. "Beth is so reliable. Thank you for celebrating our 40th anniversary in such a wonderful way." While creating a shopping list, Rachel checked the travel preparations one by one. Emma's new swimsuit and sun hat, sunscreen, necessary medications. Michael's golf equipment also needed to be updated. The resort had an 18-hole golf course, and a round with his father was planned. At night, Emma had developed a habit of flipping through a photo book of Nice before bed. Beautiful beaches, colorful fish, surfers riding waves. Looking at her daughter's profile as she gazed at these photos, Rachel felt wrapped in warm feelings. "Mama, can we play on that white sandy beach too?" "Yes, of course. Just a little over a month to go." Preparations for departure were progressing steadily. Rachel adjusted her work deadlines and notified Emma's school of her upcoming absence. Ms. Brown gladly approved and suggested Emma keep a picture diary of her memories in Nice. "Emma, isn't this lovely?" One day, Beth returned from shopping with a floral dress. "You can wear it for dinner." Emma's eyes sparkled as she tried on the dress in front of the mirror. Rachel expressed her gratitude for her sister-in-law's kindness. "I'm glad you like it," Beth smiled broadly. "I'm looking forward to it too. It will be a special week with the whole family." However, when she spoke those words, a momentary shadow seemed to cross Beth's expression. It was so subtle that Rachel thought she had imagined it. The passports arrived 2 weeks before departure. Rachel carefully stored them in the safe and put the final touches on the travel preparations. One by one, preparations for creating family memories were carefully packed into the suitcases. The night before departure, Emma was too excited to fall asleep easily. "We have to get up early tomorrow. You need to sleep properly. I get to go to Nice with Daddy and Mama. And Grandma and Aunt Beth too. We all get to go together." Rachel smiled gently at her daughter's innocent joy. Indeed, this was supposed to be a special trip. However, at that time, she had no way of knowing just how special the developments would be. The next morning at 4 a.m., Rachel's phone alarm rang. Outside the window, it was still dark, and the streets of Newton were wrapped in silence. Next to her, Michael sat up and softly said, "I'm awake." They headed to the dimly lit living room to do a final check of their luggage for the next few days. "We need to wake Emma." "I'll go." Rachel headed to her daughter's room on the second floor. Emma was still sound asleep, hugging her stuffed animal. She must have had trouble falling asleep last night due to excitement. Next to her bed was the new backpack she had chosen herself. "Emma, time to wake up." Is it morning?" "Yes. Today we start our nice trip, remember?" At those words, Emma's eyes suddenly opened wide. "Nice," she shouted as she jumped up. Her travel clothes had already been laid out the day before. Rachel gently brushed her sleepy daughter's hair while helping her get ready. At 5 a.m., the family of 3 got into their SUV. Michael took the driver's seat, and Rachel watched from the passenger seat as Emma started dozing off again in the back seat. The spring dawn was still chilly. Boston's street lights dotted the quiet darkness with points of light. They arrived at Logan International Airport just before 6 a.m. After parking the car and unloading their luggage, Emma rubbed her sleepy eyes but lit up at the sight of the enormous airport building. "Daddy, is that an airplane?" "Yes, we'll be riding in one of those soon." When they entered the terminal, Dorothy and Beth were already waiting. They stood with their luxury brand suitcases, coffee in hand. "Good morning, everyone." "Good morning, Dorothy." Beth approached with graceful movements and patted Emma's head. "Today we're off to Nice. Are you excited?" Emma nodded energetically. "Yes. I'm so excited to swim with dolphins." While standing in line at the check-in counter, Rachel checked the family's luggage. All passports were accounted for. She hadn't forgotten Emma's swimsuit, sunscreen, or medications. "Our flight is at 8 a.m., right?" Dorothy said, looking up at the electronic flight information board. "We still have plenty of time." The line moved slowly forward. The early morning airport was filled with travelers heading to various destinations. Business people in suits, backpackers, families. Emma looked around curiously at her surroundings. Then suddenly, a cry rang out through the quiet airport. "Ah! My passport is missing." It was Beth's voice. She frantically began searching through her handbag. "This is strange. I'm sure I put it in here." The whole family gathered around Beth with tense expressions. "Calm down, Beth." Dorothy placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Let's look again carefully." Beth put her luggage on the floor and desperately searched through her bag. Makeup pouch, wallet, smartphone, sunglasses. But no passport. Her expression gradually changed to one of panic. Suddenly, Beth's gaze turned to Emma. There was a coldness in her eyes that Rachel had never seen before. "Emma, you know something, don't you?" Rachel held her breath. Emma looked confused and moved closer to her mother, as if hiding behind her. "What are you saying, Beth?" Rachel said in a voice that couldn't hide her agitation. "This child hid it." Beth's voice grew louder. "Yesterday, when she came to my house, surely she—" "Beth!" Michael tried to stop his sister. But Beth continued to shout more hysterically. "My passport is gone. This child hid it." Surrounding travelers began to turn toward the commotion. Emma whispered in a trembling voice, "No, it wasn't me." Dorothy intervened. Her expression no longer showed any trace of the gentle grandmother they knew. "Emma, where did you hide her passport? Tell us quickly." "But if you can't tell us, don't come on this trip. You've ruined everything." Emma burst into tears. Rachel immediately embraced her daughter, bending down protectively. "Stop it. Don't talk to Emma that way." Amid the airport chaos, suddenly a man in a suit approached. "Excuse me," he spoke in a calm voice. "I'm Officer Johnson. Ma'am, I need to speak with you privately." At those words, the blood drained from Beth and Dorothy's faces. They looked at each other, standing speechless. Rachel tried to understand the situation through her confused thoughts. A police officer. Passport. Unreasonable accusations against her daughter. And the strange reactions of her sister-in-law and mother-in-law. "Michael, please take care of Emma." Rachel entrusted her daughter to her husband, struggling to keep her voice from trembling. Michael nodded silently and gently embraced Emma, who was still crying. The officer quietly led Rachel aside. Behind them, Beth and Dorothy stood frozen, their expressions as if they had lost all hope. In the early morning airport lobby, the family's peace began to crumble with an audible crash. The small room the police officer led Rachel to was a quiet space isolated from the airport bustle. Safety regulation posters hung on the walls, and a laptop sat on the table. Rachel sat down in the offered chair. She could feel her hands trembling slightly. Officer Johnson began in a gentle voice, "First, let me be clear that your child is completely innocent." Rachel's tension eased slightly at those words. However, the next moment, she was left speechless by the footage the officer showed. The airport security cameras had captured Beth's figure from the previous night. She had entered the airport hurriedly, stopped at an ATM, then taken out her passport and deliberately thrown it in a trash can. She disposed of her passport herself around 11 p.m. last night. The officer switched screens on the laptop. It displayed scans of multiple documents. What caught Rachel's eye were unfamiliar signatures and account information. "Have you recently applied for any personal loans?" "No, I haven't. Actually, multiple loans have been taken out in your name." The officer calmly explained the facts. Over the past 6 months, Beth had taken out loans totaling over $150,000 using Rachel's personal information. The signatures on the documents were skillfully forged, and all the borrowed money had disappeared into online casino payments. Why? How did you discover this? The bank's fraud detection system identified unusual transaction patterns. This case came to light when cross-referencing with your travel information. The officer continued his explanation. Beth had been struggling with gambling addiction for years. As her online casino debts grew, she fell into a vicious cycle of taking on new debts to repay old ones. Then she began fraudulently using her sister-in-law Rachel's personal information. And Dorothy was aware of these facts. Rachel caught her breath at those words. The warm family image shattered in an instant. She tried to protect her daughter by helping to conceal evidence. And this nice trip was actually the nice trip. The luxury resort hotel. The offer to cover all expenses. Looking back, everything had been planned with unnatural perfection. It was all a stalling tactic to delay the discovery of the debts. From outside the room, the normal bustle of the airport could be faintly heard. Flight announcements. Travelers' footsteps. And somewhere, a child crying. Emma's image flashed through Rachel's mind, making her chest tighten. Will they be arrested? She finally managed to squeeze out those words. The officer nodded quietly. For fraud and evidence tampering. We're also investigating the possibility of other victims in Beth Turner's case. Just then, there was a knock, and Michael entered the room. His face was pale, with anger and sadness mixed in his eyes. After the officer explained the situation, he remained silent for a long time. How's Emma? Rachel asked worriedly. The childcare facility staff is looking after her. Michael's voice was tired. They decided not to take that day's flight so they could make formal statements to the police. Beth and Dorothy were taken into police custody, and the planned family vacation came to an end in an unimaginable way. On the drive home, the car was filled with heavy silence. In the back seat, Emma had fallen asleep from exhaustion. When they stopped at a red light, Michael quietly said, "Why didn't Mom tell me anything?" Rachel looked at her husband's profile. His mother, strict but full of love. His successful career woman sister. For Michael, that pride must have been absolute. Who could have known that trust would crumble so easily? We have our own family, Rachel said quietly. That night, Emma wished to sleep with her parents. Too young to know the truth, the parents could only explain to their daughter that, "We won't be able to see Grandma and Aunt Beth for a while." Did Daddy and Mama believe in me? Emma asked in a small voice in the darkness. Of course, Rachel answered firmly. You did nothing wrong. We're always on your side. A week later, Rachel created new credit cards and bank accounts. Michael contacted his mother's lawyer to discuss how to proceed. Then, during the last weekend of spring break, the three of them took a small trip to Cape Cod without telling anyone. On the breakwater, Emma watched the sunset with her parents. The sea breeze pleasantly caressed their cheeks. Hey, can we go to Nice again? Emma suddenly asked. Yes, of course, Rachel answered. But next time, let's make it just the three of us." Michael embraced them both. In his arms, Rachel was thinking, "There's no such thing as a perfect family. What's important is the bond that allows you to trust each other again, even after being hurt or betrayed." The sound of waves gently lapping could be heard. In the sky, the first stars had begun to twinkle. Tomorrow would bring another new day. And they would move forward, in their own way. The early summer morning light poured down on the quiet residential streets in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. Among the colonial-style houses lining the tree-shaded avenue stood the Brown family home, a two-story white house with a meticulously maintained front yard blooming with colorful flowers. Morning sunlight streamed into the spacious kitchen, brightening the pristine space. Kate, wearing an apron, called out gently while preparing breakfast. "Emma, time to wake up." Footsteps could be heard coming down the stairs, and Emma appeared. Still looking sleepy, her "Good morning, Mom" dissolved into the morning air. While placing toast on a plate, Kate asked, "Isn't it library committee day?" At those words, Emma's expression brightened a little. "Yes. We're organizing new books." Just then, David walked into the kitchen wearing his work clothes. "Good morning, ladies of the house," he said with his usual warmth. Kate replied while pouring coffee, "Good morning, honey. Looks like another hot day." The family of three gathered at the sunlit dining table. This ordinary morning scene was the Browns' daily routine. On the wall of the second-floor study hung Kate's artwork. Kate Brown, 35, worked as a freelance graphic designer, handling branding for local businesses. She was a woman known for her shoulder-length brown hair, slender figure, and gentle smile. Her smartphone rang, a message from a client. "The logo design you sent the other day is wonderful," they said, bringing a satisfied smile to Kate's face. As she immersed herself in work, flowers outside her window swayed in the breeze. Meanwhile, at a large commercial facility construction site, David was reviewing blueprints with his workers. David had earned trust as a site supervisor at a major local construction company. He was a sincere man, standing 5 feet 11 inches with a solid build and kind eyes. "We'll start here next week as planned. I'll handle the safety checks personally." His words carried the weight of responsibility for protecting the site. In the school library after classes, Emma worked quietly between the bookshelves. Emma was 10 years old, a quiet girl full of intellectual curiosity. With large eyes and an adorable smile, she found fulfillment in her role on the library committee. In the well-maintained garden, David's mother Martha was tending to the roses. She had taught high school English for over 30 years. A petite woman with graying short hair and a proper appearance, beneath her surface politeness lay hidden a strong desire for control. The phone rang, and Martha removed her gardening gloves to answer. The conversation naturally shifted from Saturday volunteer work to her granddaughter's birthday party. "Yes, of course. Before that, there's my granddaughter's birthday party." "Oh my, Emma's turning 10 already. How time flies." At those words, Martha's expression clouded for a moment. When David returned home at dusk, he approached Kate, who was gardening. "I'm home. The flowers are beautiful as always," he said, and Kate stood up with a smile. "Welcome home. I'm giving them special care for Emma's birthday." "I see. Mom seems excited about it too." At those words, a slight shadow crossed Kate's face. Under the sunset-tinted sky, there was a sense that something lurked beneath the peaceful daily life. Once, this family had been watched over by the late Thomas Brown. The gentle, family-oriented man had passed away 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer. His death had cast a deep shadow over the family. And now, a new truth was about to shake this family's history. 10 years ago, in a Phoenix design firm's office. While young Kate was working at her desk, a man walked in. "Excuse me. About the new project." That was the fateful meeting with David. Through a 3-month joint project, they gradually grew closer. Shared values, thoughtfulness for others, it seemed as if fate had brought them together. Now, in the evening living room, the family of 3 relaxed on the sofa watching TV. Emma closed her homework book and excitedly talked about Sunday's party. "Hey, Jenny said she's coming to the party on Sunday." "That's wonderful. Your teacher is coming too." David looked up from his newspaper and said, "Mom's really excited too. Seems like she's planning something special." At those words, a shadow of anxiety crossed Kate's face. As a sleepy Emma said, "Good night," and went upstairs, her parents watched her go with loving eyes. A quiet night air enveloped the living room. Sunday, June 5th, 2 p.m. The suburban Phoenix sky blazed with early summer sunshine. A gentle breeze made it perfect party weather. An atmosphere of anticipation filled the Browns' living room. In the spacious, bright room, a handmade banner reading, "Happy 10th Birthday Emma," adorned the wall, with rainbow-colored balloons swaying elegantly from the ceiling. On the central table, covered with a white and pink tablecloth, sat a buttercream cake that Kate had lovingly made, surrounded by carefully selected presents. Kate had been busy with preparations since early morning. From finishing the cupcakes to preparing ice for drinks and cleaning the living room, she paid attention to every detail to make everything perfect. David also helped eagerly, and together they created a space filled with love for their daughter. Emma, wearing a light pink dress, greeted guests at the entrance. She had taken special care with her new socks, and her hair was styled more carefully than usual. Though typically quiet, today she seemed to radiate a special glow. Guests arrived one after another. First came Emma's best friend Jenny Smith and her mother, followed by classmate Lisa Johnson and her parents bearing a beautifully wrapped gift. From the neighboring Anderson family came Sarah, who often played with Emma, and her parents. From the Wilson family came working mother Jane and her shy son Tom. Emma's teacher, Miss Clark, also came with a warm smile to celebrate her student's birthday. Emma, usually somewhat nervous, was chatting happily with her teacher today. Several library volunteer friends had gathered too, and the room gradually grew lively. Martha had arrived 30 minutes earlier than other guests. Appearing in a new two-piece suit, she proudly observed her granddaughter's growth, yet seemed somehow unsettled. Her hands holding a white envelope trembled slightly, and she could be seen sighing deeply from time to time. Even when accepting a drink, her usually graceful movements were subdued, her hands visibly shaking. At 2:45 p.m., the party was about to reach its peak. The cake's candles were lit, and all participants chatted with smiles. As David prepared the camera, guests naturally gathered around the cake. Emma's eyes shone with excitement, and Kate smiled gently beside her daughter. A happy atmosphere enveloped the entire room, time flowing peacefully as if it would last forever. That's when the unexpected happened. A sudden scraping of a chair cut through the room's atmosphere. Martha slowly but decisively stood up. Her trembling hands clutched the envelope to her chest, now crumpled and damp with sweat. Her usual refined demeanor had vanished, her eyes taking on a strange light. "I have an important announcement." Martha's voice, though initially small and shaky, gradually grew louder. It was as if a dam holding back years of emotion was about to burst. "There's something everyone needs to know. DNA tests have proven it. Emma isn't my son's child." Those words struck the room like a bomb. A sudden silence fell, children wore confused expressions, and adults couldn't hide their shock. Voices about to sing the birthday song cut off, and time seemed to freeze. Martha took even more shocking action. Grabbing an expensive white porcelain coffee cup from the table, she threw it at Kate and Emma. The dark brown liquid arced through the air, spreading across Emma's white dress. Kate screamed, and guests gasped in surprise. However, Emma's reaction to being splashed with coffee was unexpected. With coffee dripping from her hair, she stood up slowly with a composure beyond her 10 years. Standing straight, she fixed her large eyes on her grandmother. Then, in a quiet but clear voice that everyone in the room could hear, she spoke. "Grandma, Dad isn't your real child either, is he?" At that moment, complete silence fell. Everyone held their breath, as if time had stopped. The color drained from Martha's face, her carefully painted lips beginning to tremble. Wide-eyed, she collapsed into her chair. Covering her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking, she whispered in a thin voice. "How did you? No one was supposed to know about that, no one." Children hid behind their parents with confused expressions, whispering in small voices. Jenny's mother took her daughter's hand, hurriedly preparing to leave. Miss Clark stood speechless, frozen in place. One by one, guests began to move, parents covering their children's ears as they quietly left the room. The party that had begun so festively came to an unexpected end. All that remained were coffee stains and the torn truth of a family. Only a heavy atmosphere lingered in the living room. The low hum of the air conditioner and the ticking of the clock second-hand were all that marked this strange silence. David sat down beside his mother, who remained collapsed in her chair, letting out a deep sigh. As he started to rise, saying, "I'll get some water," Martha hastily grabbed his arm. Her hand was ice-cold and trembling uncontrollably. David. I. Martha's voice quivered as she tried to form words. But her son's expression was stern as he slowly removed her hand. The sound of a glass clinking and cold water being poured echoed from the kitchen. Meanwhile, Kate gently guided Emma toward the upstairs bathroom. As they climbed the stairs, coffee still dripped from Emma's white dress. Each drop seemed to mark this special day's memory with an indelible stain. "Emma, are you okay?" While preparing the shower, Kate watched her daughter's expression. But Emma's eyes held a strange calmness. Pushing back her coffee-soaked hair, she answered in a small voice. "Mom, I've known all along. About being adopted, and about Grandma too." Kate's hands froze for a moment at those words. The weight of those words, coming from a 10-year-old girl, clutched at her heart. "I found old letters in Dad's desk drawer. Letters from Grandpa." Emma continued. "Grandpa really loved Dad, didn't he? Even though they weren't related by blood." Kate silently embraced Emma. Mother and daughter stayed that way for a long time as shower steam filled the room. Downstairs, David faced Martha. After taking a sip of water, Martha seemed to have regained some composure. However, her eyes still swirled with regret and confusion. "Why today?" David's voice carried deep sadness rather than anger. "I wanted to protect you." Martha tried to open the envelope with trembling hands. "When I saw these test results, Enough." David took the envelope from his mother's hands. "Dad knew. I knew too. 15 years ago, when I was hospitalized." Martha's face turned pale at those words. "Thomas." "Yes. Dad knew everything. But he never blamed anyone. He loved us, as a family." Martha's shoulders began to shake. The long-kept secret and her husband's deep love seemed to tear at her heart. David continued, "Emma is adopted. We completed the paperwork 5 years ago while you were away caring for Dad. We explained it as a natural pregnancy because we didn't want to worry him during his illness." The confession was like a long-sealed door suddenly thrown open. Around 4 p.m., Emma returned downstairs in fresh clothes. The living room still held the sad remnants of party decorations. Dried coffee stains on the floor vividly preserved the memory of that day. Emma slowly approached her grandmother. Martha shrank away at the sight of her granddaughter. However, Emma smiled gently and took her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, do you hate me now?" At that innocent question, tears spilled from Martha's eyes. "Of course not. Emma, Feelings too complex for words made the room's air tremble. Just then, the doorbell rang. Everyone in the family snapped back to reality, as if they'd forgotten time was passing. When David opened the door, the Anderson couple from next door, who had been at the party earlier, stood there with concerned expressions. They offered apologies for their hasty departure and words of concern for Emma. Their presence reflected the warmth of the community they had built in this town over many years. It seemed like a small but certain light of hope on the long road this family would face. The next evening at sunset, 4 people sat in Martha's living room. The setting sun through the window cast warm light into the heavy atmosphere. The time had finally come to reveal everything. Martha sat in her armchair, wearing a different expression from yesterday. Though clearly exhausted from what must have been a sleepless night, there was a certain resolute calmness about her. On the sofa across from her sat David and Kate, and surprisingly, Emma was present too. "Begin, David," Martha's voice trembled slightly. David took a deep breath and began to unravel memories from 15 years ago, when he was 28. "It was when I was hospitalized for suspected hereditary kidney disease," David began quietly. "During the tests, they found a blood type inconsistency. When the doctor explained it to me, I first thought it must be a mistake in the test. The memory came back as vivid as if it were yesterday, the doctor in his white coat explaining the test results with an apologetic expression, and Thomas visiting the hospital room that evening. Dad knew everything. But he never mentioned it. That day was the first time he told me the truth." David's voice was filled with nostalgia and gratitude. 1960, when Mom and Dad were teaching at the same high school. Mom had a close colleague, John Carter from the English department. At that name, Martha's body trembled slightly. It was as if memories from over 50 years ago had suddenly become vivid again. They became very close. But Carter suddenly took a position at a university on the East Coast. Right after that, Mom discovered she was pregnant. Silence dominated the room. Emma listened to her father's story with a serious expression. Dad accepted everything. Instead of blaming Mom, he accepted it as fate. And he loved me, the child who was born, unconditionally as his own. Tears rolled down Martha's cheeks. Memories and emotions sealed away in her heart for 50 years were now flowing out like a broken dam. "Thomas." Martha's voice was hoarse. "Until the end, he." As Martha struggled with her words, David smiled gently. "Yes, Dad loved you until the very end. That's why I could accept everything too. Dad taught me that blood ties mean nothing compared to the true bond between parent and child." With those words, the atmosphere in the room began to soften slightly. "But why did you do the DNA test?" Kate asked quietly. Martha looked at the envelope in her hands and slowly began to speak. I couldn't stop wondering about Emma's true origins. When I learned that David and Kate couldn't have children naturally, I thought they might be hiding something." Martha's voice continued, filled with self-reproach. "After Thomas passed away, something broke inside me. Having lost my support, I began to doubt everything. And you thought our happiness might be built on lies," David finished his mother's thought. "That's why you did Emma's DNA test. But Mom, those results mean nothing." Kate began to speak quietly. 5 years ago, we decided to adopt." Her voice was calm. "At that time, Father was in the hospital, and you were staying with him. We didn't have the chance to explain everything. It was our mistake to lie about the adoption," David continued. "Dad's condition was worsening, and we didn't want to cause any more worry. Emma slowly walked over to her grandmother. "Grandma, I've known for 2 years that I'm not Mom and Dad's real child." Martha looked at her granddaughter in surprise. The same strength from yesterday remained in those eyes. "One day, I found old letters in Dad's desk. Letters Grandpa wrote to Dad. They said that even without blood ties, you can become real parent and child." Emma gently held her grandmother's hand. "So I understand. I understand Grandpa's feelings." Large tears fell from Martha's eyes. Her hands trembled in her granddaughter's small ones. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I ruined your special birthday." "It's okay, Grandma." Emma's voice was filled with remarkable gentleness. "I think this became my most important birthday. Because we could tell the truth." Those words seemed to quietly dissolve the walls of lies and misunderstandings that had built up over the years. Outside the window, the sun was setting. The rose bushes in Martha's garden glowed golden in the light. The flowers she had planted with Thomas still bloomed with unchanging beauty. A month later, on a Sunday, a barbecue was held in the Browns' backyard. The savory aroma of meat grilling under David's careful attention drifted on the early summer breeze. Kate arranged her homemade salads on the table while Emma helped set up with her friend Jenny. Martha was there too. The obsessive shadow that had once clouded her face was gone, replaced by a gentle smile. In this garden filled with memories of Thomas, a new kind of family bond was quietly but surely taking root. The invisible threads of blood relations can sometimes bind and burden people. But true family bonds run deeper and stronger. This was the form of unconditional love that Thomas had taught them. Truth sometimes reveals itself painfully. But beyond that pain lie genuine forgiveness and reconciliation. The Brown family's story stood as testimony to this truth.